Max Millman here. I just wanted to give some background to the rapid rhythm system, how it can benefit people and how it works, musicians, and how it works. So, over the years, I noticed there was quite. I've been teaching for about 13, 14 years now, and over that time, I noticed quite a lack of knowledge when it came to rhythm, and quite a lot of limitation within what was being created and what was understood. And I found that a lot of the ways that rhythm was learned were quite arbitrary and long-winded, and and quite largely quite ineffective. I noticed mistakes being made that I would expect to have been ironed out, even amongst students who had done completed their degrees in university and all sorts. So I've created a system that sort of captures all of the things you need to know in rhythm that's often learned over years into 9 rules, a comprehensive system which I can use in any situation, or anyone who learns can use in any situation to create rhythms that are optimized. So as easy to read and create as possible. So this helps with your creativity, and it helps with learning new music. You can create music that's more complete. You can create and learn music that is a lot more complex than if you don't have this knowledge. So I also noticed that the traditional ways of teaching this sort of thing, there are a lot of books and a lot of very passive, a lot of reading, a lot of having to consume a lot of material and sift through a lot of material to get to the res, to get to the queen's jelly, the good information. So I thought I'd speed the whole thing up and make it immediately interactive. So anyone learning it can instantly sort of get their foot in the door and start experimenting and learning along the way, rather than consuming passively a lot of videos, a lot of information, which can be pretty tedious and boring. I just wanted to get them to engage immediately. So, without further ado, I'm going to show you one of the first rules, how I approach it. I use a questionnaire, so you're instantly involved. The client is instantly involved in the learning process, and and all the learning is done along the way. So I'll give you a demonstration of that now. So rapid rhythm is comprised of a variety of different inventions and approaches to learning music. The first ones are binary questionnaires, so yes or no, simple yes or no answer questionnaires, so that the learning curve is quite smooth. There's not a lot to learn. We just focus on one concept at a time, one convention at a time, or one rule, rhythmic rule, one of those 9 rhythmic rules that make rhythm function. So with this one, convention 1 states that all of the time values used within a bar must equate to the time signature of that bar, because the time signature defines the amount of time in the bar we have to use. Each of these time values you can see here, these notes and rests, each of them have a duration, which is the musical technical term for a length. So they each last a different amount of time depending on their time value. So this will make more sense as we actually do the work. If the client has previous knowledge of music theory and is somewhat familiar with time values, that's your notes and rests shown here, if they've got some of that knowledge already, then I would probably just get them to go ahead and answer this questionnaire straight away. However, if they don't, or if they're unsure of the duration, that's the length of time values, notes and rests, I would get them to use a tool to help them learn this immediately, without having to read a theory book or without having to do a lot of study to get started or watch a lot of videos. I would just get them to immediately work out the time values along the way. So there's 2 benefits from doing this questionnaire. One is that you would learn your time values if you don't know them already, and 2 is that you would learn convention 1. So let's jump right in and I'll show you one of those tools that I use to help work out time values. And in fact, it can be used to work out any rhythm and is freely available on my website, www.rapidrhythm.co.nz. So remember, the objective is to look at the time values, the notes and rests within the example provided, and ask yourself, do they equate to the time signature 2/4? Meaning, is the sum of all their duration, so the duration of each of them, the length of each of them, added together, is the sum of all of that equal to 2 quarter notes long here? 2/4, 1, 2, this stretch of time coming from here to there, half of the sheet. So the way we would work this out if we're not familiar with time values is, rather than reading a long convoluted theory book and having really slow progress, we would use another guide that goes with this called the time value table.
I'm displaying that right now for you to have a look at. Okay, so they would have a look at each of the notes and rests, the time values, and compare it to that table. So we can see the first one's a 16th note in the other table. So if they correctly, they would then translate it into this table. They would look at the note, check it in the other table, and then put it in here. The reason they put it in here rather than in the other one is it's a bit clearer and a bit neater, and they have to retrieve it from memory. So they would look at the symbol, check it in the second table, and then remember its length, and then apply it to here, so it helps them learn a bit more thoroughly. So if they applied it correctly, they'd be putting it here, like that. So we use a bracket for notes, and we use a vertical line for rests, as you'll see. So, okay, so they've done the first one there, and whenever we put a symbol in one of these lines, so a bracket or a line to show a note or a rest, it implies that the entire square, the entire cell, is used up, and we've selected that in terms of its length. So if I put a bracket here, we're up to this point in the chart here, there. If I, hopefully you can see that, yeah, like that. So, which is where that line ends. If I were to put it, let's say, here, it would end here at the end of the other bit of that cell. You've also got alternative positions here. So if I were to put it on one of the alternative positions, it goes to the next alternative position within the same line. So the square is always the same. The selection on each of these rows is always the same length, no matter where it starts, whether it starts on one of the black lines or whether it starts halfway through. Okay, so let's do the next one. So we've got a quarter note rest, which we would verify that it was a quarter note rest using the time value table. So quarter note rest, so we're up to here, remember, because we've selected one there. So a quarter note rest would go here. So it's a vertical line because it's a rest and not a note. There you go. And as before, because we've used an alternative rest position, we have to go to the next alternative rest position. We haven't started from here, we've started from here. It's still the same length, it's just being used in a different place to where it normally would be used. We're using it here. So instead of going from here to here, it goes from there to there. They're color-coded to help you. So you've got red and red, blue and blue, orange and orange. So we know this one actually ends here where the red bit is. So bearing that in mind, we're going to do the next one. So we've got a 16th note rest by the look of it. Sorry, I've gone to the wrong place there. That's it. We've got to go to the right row for the type of note or rest it is, whether it's a quarter note, 8th note, 16th note, or a crotchet, quaver, semi-quaver, depending on your terminology you like to use, British or American. So we've done that one, and we've got one more to go. So we put that here. We're up to here now. We put a rest, the 16th rest here. Now we're up to the last one, which is a 16th note. Right here. Just double checking I've done all that correctly. Yep, looks like I have. Cool. So we can also close the final one with a bracket if we want to, like this, just to verify that we've finished. So now we ask ourselves, is that example 2/4 long? Is it 2 quarter note beats, 1, 2 long? I would say it's not. It looks like it's a little bit short by this little bit here, this section here, right there. So I'd say it's actually, instead of 2/4, I would say that's actually 7/16, because there are 8 16th notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in a 2/4 bar, and we're 1 short. So we're 7, it would be a 7/16 time signature. They don't have to give the correct time, that's fine. Bonus points if they can give the correct time signature, which is 7/16, but all they need to do is tell me whether it's 2/4 or not, and in this case it's not.
So now it's time to answer the question in order to develop our knowledge. So the question is up here. Does the rhythm follow convention 1? So remember, convention 1 is that all of the time values, these notes and rests time values, the sum of their duration, their length, added together, does it equal the length of the time signature? So is it 2/4 beats long, 2 quarter note beats long? In this case, we worked out, if you'll recall, that it was in fact 7/16. So it was the real time, so the sum of all those added together was 7/16, not 2/4. So it was too short by 1/16 note. So I'm going to go ahead and say no. So let's check and see if we're correct. It does not follow convention 1. That's what we're going to say. Correct. The rhythm does not adhere to convention 1. In this case, they were too short. The notes and rests used didn't equate to the time signature. So that's a fundamental problem with our with the notation that we've made, or with the notation that's been made here.
Okay, so just to make it perfectly clear what we're trying to achieve here, I'm going to do the second one now, and without explaining it too thoroughly, just to speed things up, I'm just going to kind of go ahead and do it real quick. So we've got an 8th note rest, that would go here. We've got a 16th note, which would go here. We've got another 8th note rest, which would go here in the alternative position, from red to red, so we're up to here now. From there to there. Okay, so we've got a 16th note rest, 8th note rest, then we've got a 16th note occurring here. And then we've got a dotted 8th note rest. So this does require a little explanation because a dotted note extends the note's duration by 50%. So ordinarily, an 8th note, if it was started here, would end here. Remember, we selected that cell, the length of that cell, so if we started here, it would end here. But in this case, because it's 50% longer, this is 50% of it, because there's two of these. That's the first 50%, and that's the second 50%, there and there. So one of these squares longer, because it's 50% longer than it was. So instead of ending here, it's going to end here instead. So here's the end of that one there. We'll close it off with a bracket to show that we've finished. Alrighty, it's time to evaluate it. So let's have a look. Remember, we want these time values to add up, those notes and rests, we want them to add up to 2/4. So let's have a look. I mean, we can clearly see that if 2/4, if that's one quarter note and that's another one, we can clearly see that this is too long by this section here. It should end here, right in the middle, if it was 2 quarter note beats long. But instead it's ending here, a little bit too far. 1/16th note too far. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 16th notes instead of 8 16th notes, which is that equivalent length. So the time signature in this case is 9/16. Actually, we don't need that, but 9/16 instead of 2/4. So just to really illustrate that, 9/16 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 2/4 is 1, 2 quarter notes for 2/4. Oh, there you go. So now it's time to answer the question again. So the question: does the rhythm follow convention 1? Does the sum of all the time values equal 2/4? Well, we worked out it didn't. We worked out that in this time, the last time it was too short, but this time they were too long by 1/16th note, meaning the correct time signature was 9/16 instead of 2/4. So we're going to say no once again. Correct, it does not adhere. So we're learning more and more the more of these that we do. We're getting more used to the fact that the sum of the time values must equate to the time signature. It's a fundamental part, possibly, or definitely one of the most fundamental parts of music theory when it comes to rhythm. So there's a reason why this rule exists, why convention 1 exists, why the time values must equate to the time signature. And the reason is that the time signature has two purposes. One is to define the length of time available for a musical idea to occur, and the other is for it to define how the time within that time signature is to be subdivided. So we cover subdivision of time in a different lesson. So yeah, that's why it exists. So if the time signature defines how much time is available within a bar, which is basically a chunk of music, then obviously if that's how much time we've got, 2 quarter notes in this case, then the time values used within that space must equate to that. So I mean, this is usually the reason we approach this on its own, and really I've created a questionnaire to deal with this, is that a lot of musicians don't really understand this. I think these days, I think maybe when pen and pencil and paper were used, in olden times, I think people would have had to be more scrupulous, a bit more careful about their time values and time signatures. But in this day and age, we use software such as Sibelius or Finale or whatever you use. It generally takes care of this for us. So that's really helpful and convenient and helps us make music quicker. But I think a lot of us overlook these fundamental concepts.
I hope you've enjoyed this class sample and have found it somewhat informative. Please don't hesitate to book your free 40-minute trial with us. Thanks very much for watching, and I hope to hear from you soon.